Good morning. This video is a revision of activity 9 and 10 that I gave you as an assignment for the spreadsheets module. First, we need to start Microsoft Excel, which we can do from here with ease. So the purpose of activity 9 and 10 was to test your knowledge on how to enter Excel formulas and how to move Excel formulas from one place to another within a cell. So we go to open other workbooks, which is the option that we are going to do, because activity number 9 is saying that we should open the Excel formula document. I'll attach the instructions on the description to the video. So we go and go to browse. My file is in the documents folder, so I'll go to Excel formula, click on open. So that's how I open an existing file in Excel. So I've opened the Excel formula document. Okay. So point number 1 says that in cell B9, use the AutoSum button to total the cells for the first quarter. So I'll navigate to cell B9, which is this one, and I have to use the AutoSum button. The AutoSum button is over here. So if I click on the AutoSum button, it then puts in the summation formula, sum from B5 to B8. I click on enter. So that activity is done. And most of you got that one correct. Then the next instruction says, in cell F5, use the AutoSum button to total the cells for the northern region. So this is the northern region. We want to put in cell F5. Again, we press the AutoSum button. It shows us the range of cells where the summation sign is taking its values from, and then once we are satisfied, we press enter. That's the summation. Number 4, it says select the blank cells in the range F6 to F8 and use the AutoSum button to total the cells for the 3 regions at the same time. When answering questions for the ICT certification, you need to make sure that you follow instructions. If you do the summations for the cells one at a time, your answer will not be considered as correct. So we are being told to select the range F6 to F8. Remember what I said in class is that for selecting a range, you can either do it by the mouse, F6 to F8, or the recommended method is through the name box here. You write your, it's saying F6 to F8. That way, if you are selecting a large range and you are working with a very large workbook, you won't make a mistake. So we have selected our cells from cell F5 to F6, to F8. Then we are required to use the AutoSum button to calculate at the same time. Right. So we just highlight the cells and then click the AutoSum button. As you can see, the summations were entered simultaneously at once. That's what this question requires us to do. Then it goes on to say that you check each formula on the formula bar to make sure that columns B through E were calculated for each row. So this is the formula bar. If we click on the cell, we want to verify the formula and then go to the formula bar. It shows us the range of cells where the summation function is taken its values from. So here we are just confirming if we have really added the correct cells. And as you can see, we have selected the correct cell. So these moves that we are doing, these maneuvers, they will be recorded by the system and then be used to mark you if you did the correct thing. So do not skip the processes when answering these questions. Okay? Then the next question says, in cell H5, create a formula that subtracts the expenses in cell G5 from the total cells in cell F5 for the northern region. Okay, so we want to go to cell H5. This is cell H5. We want a formula that subtracts G5 from F5. What do we do to enter formula mode? We say we can either use a plus sign or an equal sign. So we are saying equal F5. Where is F5? We click on F5. When you are entering formulas, remember, you do not need to type F5. You need to go and click on that cell. That is the most appropriate method that avoids errors. Okay, so we click on F5. Then we want to subtract G5 from that. So we put a minus sign. Remember, minus is one of our Excel operations that we talked about in class. So F5 minus G5. We put G5 here, right? So you see, that is another way of putting cells. I've typed, but it's not the recommended method. What is the recommended method? I said you go and click cell G5 and then press enter. Your formula is now entered in cell H5. The next question says, in cell I5, type a function that averages the northern region cells for the 4 quarters in the range B5 to E5. So remember, we're working with formulas and functions. You need to know the basic averaging, the basic functions in Excel that we talked about in class. We talked about the sum function, the average, the mean, the max, the count A, and the round functions. You need to know these functions. Okay? Then for our formulas or our operators, we have the plus, the minus, the asterisk, the slash, the parentheses, the brackets for determining the order of operation of our formulas. Then we've got the percentage sign and then the caret sign for exponential functions. You need to remember those. You need to practice using those signs. So back to our question, we are saying we want to use a function that averages. Where do we want to put that sign? We want to put that function in cell I5. So the range is B5 to E5. That's what we want to average. So what do? We put a plus sign to let Excel know that we are entering a formula. Then we type average. So when I start typing a function, right, Excel gives me suggestions. In this case, I want the average function. I'll select the average function by double clicking it. It will then show me the syntax for entering that function. For example, the average function, I need to enter the first number separated by a comma, then the second number, the third number, and so forth. But in this case, we are working with a range. So what do? We want to the range B5 to E5. We go to the range and select that range and fit it into our formula. So the range that we want, which is B5, and select to E5. That's the range. So you see, average for B5 to E5, and then we close the bracket. That's the syntax for entering the average function in Excel, and press enter. The average is then calculated, right? It then goes on to say, in cell I6, use the AutoSum list to enter a function that averages the southern region cells for the 4 quarters in the range B6 to E6. Now we are being told of a specific method that we need to use to put in a function that averages this. The first one was to type a function. So if I have used the AutoSum drop down to answer the first question, it was going to be wrong. And now if I type in the average function for this question, instead of using the AutoSum drop down name, the answer will be wrong. So I need to follow the instructions as they are. So it's saying use the AutoSum list. The AutoSum list is over here, where I'm pointing with the mouse, to put a function that averages the southern region cells for the 4 quarters in the range B6 to E6. So what do? I come to the cell I6, click on it to select it, then drop down the list on the AutoSum and select average. Then I'll go and select B6 to E6 and press enter. That's it. Then the next question says, in cell I7, use the insert function button to average the central region cells for the 4 quarters in the range B7 to E7. I'm being instructed again to use the insert function button, okay? Not to use the AutoSum list or not to type the average function, but to use the insert button. Where is it? The function insert button is over here. This is the insert function button. So what do? I click my cell I7 to select it, go to my insert function button and click on it. Then the list of functions will appear here. Average is a recently used or it's a frequently used function, so it usually appears at the top here. But for instance, you can be asked to insert the count A function, for example. If you can see here, it's not appearing. So what you need to do is you type in the name of the function or a brief description of the function, then search it. So for example, I want the count A function. I'm going to type it here. If I type count A and say go, okay, it will then search for that function. My computer is a bit slow. Okay. it then comes back, count A. That's the function. These are the recommended functions for the count A that I've searched. So if you are searching for a function which is not automatically appearing on your functions list, you need to search it. Right now we have been asked for the average function, so we'll go back to the average function. Right, mostly used, this is the average function. Also, you may want to use functions that are in this particular group or particular category. If you use the drop down, it will tell you about it, will give you the financial functions, the date and time functions, statistical, database, logical functions, engineering functions. All of them, they will appear under a specific category. So the default one is the mostly used, which we are using to find the average function. So I want the average function, I click on it, click OK. What do I want to do? I want to find the average of a range. If it has been a number, I'll put the first number here and the second number here, but now I want to find a range. What do? I write the range in this box here. The range is B7 to E7. That's the range I want to calculate my average on. Click OK. The formula is then inserted. Okay. Then the next question is saying, in cell I8, use any method to average the western region cells for the 4 quarters in the range B8 to E8. I'll go to cell I8. I use any method. Now, if you are told to use any method, you then use whatever method that you prefer to use. The one that I prefer to use is just to copy, because the range B8 and E8 is directly below the range B7 and E7. So I just choose to copy the formula. Right? As you can see, it's now calculating the average B8 to E8. That's the method I've chosen. You can choose to type the full function, or you can choose to copy the function. So if you are told to use any method, use any method of your choice. Okay. The next instruction says, in cell H1, use the AutoSum list to find the maximum quarterly sales for all regions. Okay. The function that we want to use is the max function, which is used to find the maximum. Then what method are we supposed to use? We are supposed to use the AutoSum list to find that formula. So we go to cell H1. Where is H1? Cell H1, which is saying highest quarterly sales. I want to find the max. Go to the AutoSum. Then I'll select max. For what range? For the B5 to E8 range. Okay, so B5, this is B5 to E, then down. So this is the B5 to E. It's saying B5 to E7. I need to drag it to cover E8 and press enter. That's my answer there. It's the maximum for B5 to E8. Number 11, use the auto calculate feature to verify the answer in cell H1. Now, what is the autocalculate feature? The autocalculate feature appears at the bottom of Excel. If I click on this cell, you see in this area at the bottom here, there is nothing appearing, which means for this version of Excel, autocalculate has not been enabled. So what I will need to do is to right click, then find, then customize the, where is the autocalculate? I need to find autocalculate. For autocalculate, I need to add maximum, and I also need to add minimum. Then average is already selected. So I'll go and highlight my data. Okay, same E8, E5 to E8. Okay, so now my autocalculate, I've added my max. So I now have my average, my mean, my max, and my sum. This is the auto calculate area in Excel. The next question says, use auto calculate feature to find the sum of all cells in the range B5 to E8. Sum, I've already enabled sum on the auto calculate, right? Then, so remember for the auto calculate, I said you right click in this blank space here, and then you select the functions that you want to appear. If you want to count, you tick it. If you want to remove something, if you want to add something, you click on it to add it to the auto calculate bar. Right. Cell 13. No, sorry, number 13. It says in cell B14, create a formula that calculates an increase of 15% on the total cells in cell B9. So cell B9, I want to go to B14. Where is B14? This is B14. Right. I want a formula that calculates an increase of 15%. So I'm putting in my Excel into formula mode, then total cells in B9. Then I want to add 15% to B9. How do I do it? I'm being given a hint in this paper. It says, hint, try multiplying cell B9 by 1.15. Multiplying a number by 1.15 effectively adds 15% to that figure. So I'm multiplying by 1.15. So I've added 15%. In cell B15, create a formula that calculates an increase of 20%. What am I going to do? I'm just going to click on B9 and multiply it by 1.2. That's effectively adding 20%. Okay. The last one says, use the range borders to edit the formula in cell B9. Drag the range border to include both the first and second quarter cells for all regions. Observe the changed results in cell B9, B13, B14, and B15. Okay, so use the range borders to edit the formula in B9. I go to B9. Remember, I said if you want to edit a formula, you do it from the formula bar. I go to the formula bar. It shows the range here for my total cell. Drag the range borders to include both the first and second quarter cells for all regions. These blue borders are my range borders. How do I drag them? If I go to the corner here, I drag to include first and include the first and second quarter cells. Right. I've included them for all regions. Okay. Then I click enter. You see, it's saying observe the changes in B9 to B15. The total here is increased because I'm now including cells from the second quarter. The figure here is also increased in response to the changes in cell B9. So that's it for activity 9. It was just showing us how to enter the different functions and different formulas in Excel. The second activity, which is activity 10, it wants us to learn how to create, copy, and move formulas and data in Excel. So this one I'm closing without saving. No, I do not want to save because I want to use the file for future practice. I'll go to my documents, open the Excel copy paste file. Okay, so after the file opens, we are going to follow the instructions as they are given in activity 10. Take note, activity 10 is also wants us to learn about cell referencing. We've got 3 types of cell referencing in Excel. We have got absolute referencing, relative, and mixed referencing. So I want you to have that in mind as we do activity 10 and try to relate to those types of referencing. So the first instruction said open Excel copy paste file. That's what we have done. The second instruction says copy the range A4 to A8 and paste to cell A14. So this is the range A4 to A8, right? Copy. We have not been told what method of copying to use, so we'll use our own discretion. In this instance, I choose to use the right click on the mouse. First highlight the range, okay? A, that's my left mouse down, and drag up to A8. I can choose another method of selecting, which is click on the first cell, which is A4, hold down shift, and then click on the last cell, which is A8, while I'm still holding down my shift key. Right, it selects the range. Then right click and copy. Then go to cell A14 and right click, then paste. That's what I've done. I've copied everything in cell A4 to A8 into cell A14 to A18. Then the next says copy the range B4 to E4 and paste in cell B14. Where is B? B4 to E4. Right? Then right click and copy. Then go to B14, right click, and paste. That's it. I've copied my contents from that first range to the second range. Then number 4 says, use the copy and paste buttons to copy the formula in cell H5 to the range H6 to H8. Now, I've been instructed to use the copy and paste buttons, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to use the first method that I used before, because that's not the correct procedure being asked to perform here. I'm being asked to use the copy and paste buttons. So take note of the instructions, please, because you may be doing something correct but not following the instructions. You'll be marked wrong. Okay? So I'll go to cell H5. Where is H5? H5, this is my column, then my row, it intersects here, I'm in cell H5. I right click. Oh, sorry, we are not using right click, we are using copy and paste buttons. We then go to the button, copy. Then I'm supposed to copy to paste it in H6 to H8. H6, highlight, down to H8. And then click on the paste button. So I've effectively copied the formula. So you see, this is code. Maybe before I do that, let me go to the formula bar so that you can see what I'm talking about. If I click on cell H5 and then go to the formula bar, you see that this formula is adding F5 to G5. Then the formula that I've copied into H6 is adding contents of F6 to G6. Right? This is called relative referencing. That's when I copied the contents of H5 here into H6. Excel used the relative referencing to assume that I want to do the same operation that I did to cell F5 and G5 to F6 and G6. That's why it copied the formula in replacing the references with the cells that are now corresponding to the new position of the formula. So this is called relative referencing. It works in some instances, but in some instances you need to use what is called absolute referencing, which we'll cover in the next steps. Right. The next instruction says, use the fill handle to copy the formula in cell I5 to the range I6 to I8. We go to I5, click on I5. The fill handle, if you move to the bottom right corner of a cell, there is what seems to be a dot line. That's what is called the fill handle. So if I move my mouse over it, my mouse will change into a small cross. It means I've reached the fill handle of my cell. So what I will do is click my left click on the mouse and hold it down, then drag until I cover the whole range which I'm expected to cover. They said I should move from I6 to I8, so that range is covered. I've used the fill handle to drag a formula over a given range of cells. Then the next one says, use the fill handle to copy the formula in cell B9 to the range C9 to I9. I'll go and click on the cell, go to the fill handle, then drag my formula up to the range I9 as instructed and drop it there. So that's how you use the fill handle. Then the next instruction says, in cell B15, enter a formula that multiplies the contents in cell B5 by the projected increase in cell D12. Now, this question requires us to use what is called absolute referencing. Okay, so I'm going to go to cell B15, I mean, right? Then I want to enter a formula that multiplies the content in cell B5. Where is B5? B5 is here. I want to multiply it by the increase in D12. Where is D12? It's here. Okay, so I go to B15. I'm going to put my plus sign to let Excel know that I'm now in formula mode. I'll then click B5 and multiply it by D12. Where is D12? D12 is here, right? While I'm there, I'm being asked to go to the formula bar and click on D12. Then press the F4 key on the keyboard. Now, while I'm pressing the F4 key on the keyboard, I want you to take a look at the change that is going to happen to D12 here. So I'm going to press F4 on my keyboard. You see, there are two dollar signs that have been added to D12. One dollar sign before D, and then the other dollar sign before 12. So the purpose of these dollar signs are to lock the cell references. to put now our formula into an absolute reference cell. So this is complete absolute referencing. The dollar sign before D is locking the column. The dollar sign before 12 is locking the row. Now that's my formula here, because whatever I'm going to calculate later, I want to refer to my projected increase in this cell. I do not want my references to move to other cells. So that's why I'm looking here through absolute referencing. So I finished entering my formula there. The next step is saying use the fill handle to copy the contents in cell B15 to the range C15 to E15. The fill handle is this part at the corner here. I'm dragging from C15, okay, to E15. You see, if I click on cell E15, it's still referring to D12. It did not move with the formula. If I had not placed these dollar signs, it means this formula was not going to refer to this cell. It was going to refer to another cell, which would distort my formula. So that's the purpose of absolute referencing. Okay? Now, the next question says, select the range B15 to E15, if necessary, and use the fill handle to copy the contents down to rows 16, 17, and 18. So I am highlighting B15 to E15. Using the fill handle, I'm going to drag to fill in 16. Sorry, let me undo. I highlight my cells B15 to E15. Then my fill handle, drag to 16 and to 17 and 18. Right, my formula is copied. So you see, my reference is still D12. It has not moved because it's absolute reference. But look, the E8 is moving, because here is not E8, here is E5, okay? But here is now E8, which is relative referencing on the first part of the formula or the function. But the second part is supposed to be locked. So I want all the western region, the central regions, the southern regions, I want to calculate their projections for the next year with an increase of 1.08 or with an increase of 8%, okay? So that's absolute referencing for you there. Then the next thing is saying, change the projected increase in cell D12 from 1.08 to 1.12. This is effectively changing it from a projected increase of 8% to a projected increase of 12%. So I put 1.2 here. You see, all the values have increased by 12%. I also need to change my text here, saying this is no longer an 8% projected increase. It's now a 12% projected increase. The next instruction says, use drag and drop editing to move the cell contents in the range E14 to E18 to the range G14 to G18. This question, the keywords are use the drag and drop editing to move. So we need to take note of the word move. We are moving, which means where there was data, we're going to leave no data there. So we are moving. We want to use the drag and drop. So we are selecting E14. Say this is E14 to E18. Okay. We want, so to drag and drop, we then move, you see, to the edge of our green line here. We hold down our mouse and then move our cells. We want to move them to G14. So we are going to G14 and drop it there. Look what has happened. The contents of our cells or the references have not changed. They are still the same references. So we have just moved using the drag and drop. So moving means that the source data in cell references do not change if I move. Okay? But if I copy, then those contents will change, as you shall see later when we do the operation for copying cell contents. Use the undo button to reverse the previous action. We want to undo, we want our data to go to where it was originally placed. Now, the next instruction says, use the drag and drop editing to copy. Remember what I said? We are now copying. So when we copy, I want you to see what will happen to the contents, the data in the cell, as well as the references. They will change. So use drag and drop editing to copy the cell contents in the range F4 to F8 to the range F14 to F18. So where is F4 to F8? This is F4. Right? To F8. I want now to copy the cell contents. Right? What am I going to do? I'm copying, and then I want to put them in F14 to F18. Where is F14? Is here. I highlight to F18, and then sorry, while it's still highlighted, we've used copy. We come to F14, we want to paste. So our data is actually changed. You notice that the cell references have also changed. They are now referring to E15, B15 to E15. Here it was referring to B5 to E5. So that's the difference between copying and moving. When you move, you are moving the entire contents and your references don't change. When you copy, you are leaving the original contents as they are in their position and putting them onto a new location. The next instruction says, copy the range H4 and H9 and use the paste list to paste the values to cell K4. View the contents of cells K5 to K9 in the formula bar and see the difference. So we want to copy the range H4 to H9. Where is H? This is H. So H4 to H9, we want to copy. Then we go to K4. This is K4. We want to use the drop down on the paste list so that we paste the values. Remember, they said paste the values. I click on the drop down. We want to paste values only. We click on paste. Now, if you go to the formula bar, for cell H5, we've got the formula, but for cell K5, we have just the value. So you can use the paste drop-down list to copy only values and leave the formula at its original place. The next instruction is that change the expenses in cell G5. We navigate to G5. I said you can use this box here to go to G5. I click enter. These are the expenses G5 to 50,000. 50, 1, 2, 3. I want you to see how H5 will change, but K5 will not change, because K5 is now, it was only a value that we copied. So I press enter. You see H5, it updates the net profit here, but the net profit in K5 is not affected. So you see, that's the difference between these two formulas. So that's the end of our exercise. This video took a little bit longer than I anticipated it to take, but make sure you use this video to revise your answers. Most people, activity 9, they got it correct, but activity 10, I see people had some challenges in performing the requested operations there. So good day. Thank you.